I'm Eric Chemi, and this is Politely Pushy. Juda Englemayer is a veteran crisis communications professional who has worked with notable celebrities and corporations over the last 3 decades. He is the go-to guy for renowned personalities in hot water, some of whom you may have heard of and read about in top-tier publications. While many PR professionals would be hesitant to take these clients on, Juda says these individuals have a right to proper PR representation, and he's up to the challenge. Juda, thanks for coming on the show. And what makes you say yes to the people that many others would shy away from?
So, thank you, Eric. I appreciate being here, and thank you for the nice introduction. What makes me say yes to people? I don't say yes to everybody. Let me start by saying that I've sat down with attorneys for certain people, and I've said no to them. I have to believe myself that there's some credibility to the story that they're telling, or at least to the issue that we're discussing. And I have to have a bond with the client, because in order for me to present it to the media, there's no way for me to do it if I don't necessarily believe in it. I know that sounds counter to what we do for a living in public relations, but if I don't believe in what I'm pitching, I can't promote it. Possibly I can't promote it properly. And I've got reporters back who are like, "Come on, Judah, you don't really believe what you're saying, do you?" And if I can't say yes to that, then I can't represent. So that's how I do it. But in terms of everyone deserving a proper representation, isn't our media landscape has changed a lot over the past several years. The legal landscape has changed. It used to be that something in courtroom was confined to a courtroom, but now, as you know, and as we've seen, a lot of major issues are now tried in public before it ever gets to a courtroom. When it gets to the courtroom, it's already fait accompli. So based on that, I've decided that there are certain people, certain issues that deserve representation, just like a lawyer is allowed to represent anybody, and people are entitled to proper representation. I believe for this purpose, particularly when their issue is being tried in the media and being decided in a courtroom by peers who have been influenced by the media, they need help. And I believe it's I believe personally is as much of a right as the legal right is now.
You're so right. When we hear about lawyers representing possibly unsavory individuals, we expect that. We know that's part of our system from day one, going back to the 1700s. Everybody has this right, and the process requires that everybody gets defended, gets represented, so that both sides are going through the right process as it benefits all of society for the next person who may be on trial. But you also bring up a really good point. So much of this is trial in publicity, right? Before we get to a real court case, before a juror ever gets picked, it's all being put out there in the news. And there's so many media outlets right now, right? That any niche, you can be a celebrity in a certain niche and be destroyed in your little world. Maybe I don't see it. Maybe you don't see it. Maybe a normal person doesn't see it, but in their world, their Twitter group, their Reddit group, their newspaper, their online publication can really make their life miserable before their actual case, let's say. Well, maybe it's not even legal, right?
Well, I mean, first of all, you're right about that, and most time it is legal, whether it's a civil case or a criminal case. But I mean, and those are the types that you use crisis communications for. But then there's reputation management as well, which doesn't really involve any legal issues, but just the way somebody's perceived. But that's a little different than some of the stuff that I do. I do that work as well, but there's the public aspect, and then there's the SEO, search engine optimization, online reputation management, that doesn't necessarily involve a legal proceeding. But there are so many different, and there's so many different venues right now and mediums. And you're absolutely right that it doesn't necessarily matter that it's global, because sometimes it's very niche. And listen, the podcast we're on right now with you is niche, and some people might see that, and it affects their lives. Every client, every company, every issue has its audience, and that's who we target. I don't necessarily target the whole world. I don't have to get 51% of a population. I need 3% of the world in a little area for my clients to succeed sometimes. And others, it's everywhere, depending who it is. It could be major, and that could be a bigger problem.
Speaking of major, and you haven't told me these are from my research, people I talked to, I've heard Harvey Weinstein's a client,
Right.
Or husband. Annie Delvey is or was a client. Am I on the right track?
Anna, not Annie, but
yes. And my daughter's birthday is Annie. Her birthday is today.
So congratulations. Happy birthday.
Annie and Anna. I was getting the Delvey and the Anna confused. Anna Delvey.
Yeah. So I'll get to Harvey. Harvey is the big one, and the elephant, the gorilla in the room, as they say. Harvey regardless what anybody thinks of him. I'll get into those issues in a few minutes if you want, but he is one he's been tried in the media before he ever got to the courtroom. He was tried in
That's
the
a
media.
fact. Whatever you believe, that is definitely a fact.
Right. And he was tried in the media way before it was even an issue. Going back to the Oscars, when Seth MacFarlane would make a comment that, 3 women who no longer have to sleep with Harvey to get ahead in Hollywood back in 2012. It's always been a preconceived notion with him that there's no way any juror who gets to a courtroom never heard of him or doesn't know what the issues are. And that's not just a Variety or Hollywood Reporter. That's New York Times. That's the Daily Mail in London, the UK. That's the Guardian. That's the LA Times. It's everywhere. It's not just a small niche. That's a hard nut to crack, as opposed to other clients, technology or language or whatever. Who has small industries. This affected. He was convicted everywhere before he ever got to a courtroom. And the issue with Harvey, and I'm not upset. I'm not embarrassed to say, I've become fond of him. I met him a while back. I met him through his attorneys years ago, and he and I established a bond. And I have my opinions on what kind of person he is and what he's done. And I simply didn't believe he did what he was accused of in a court of law. I don't believe he was the nicest person. I never said that he never did anything unethical or immoral, or I never said that he was an easy guy to get along with. But the things that he was being accused of in the court of law, that's what I felt. I can lend a hand. And with Anna Delvey is Anna Sorokin's her real name. Sweet girl. She did things wrong. And, she got convicted and she served her time. We live in a society where, we want to believe that once you've been through the prison system, once you've served your time, you've been convicted, you should be allowed an opportunity to succeed again, to become a model citizen again. And that's what we're trying to help do that with her as well. We're not saying she didn't do anything wrong. We're not saying she didn't make mistakes. We're not saying that she's not guilty of the crime she was convicted of. We're saying that with all that, she has a lot more to add to this world. And to the extent we can help her, we want to.
How did you fall into this line of work?
So it's interesting. I've been blessed to have had some fascinating experiences in my lifetime. I started working right out of school for the New York State Assembly for a guy who some people might not have heard of right now. His name was Sheldon Silver. He was at the time the Ways and Means Chairman of the New York State Assembly.
I've heard of him.
Well,
I don't know. Right there. You just say I started working for Sheldon Silver, and a lot of things come together. But go ahead, tell the story.
So listen, Shelley was my assemblyman. I lived on the Lower East Side. He was my assemblyman. I needed a job out of school, and he offered me an opportunity. And frankly, working in New York State politics is a way to learn everything quickly. It's a environment that, as you've seen with Andy Cuomo recently, and I guess and with Elliot Spitzer in the past, and Eric Schneiderman, it's a hard place to hold your head up high and stay above the fray. But it's a great place to really learn the backroom politics. You learn savvy politics. You learn how to keep yourself going. Learn how to get yourself ahead. You learn how to navigate, negotiate, and duck when you have to. It's an interesting place. It's fascinating. And when I worked for Shelley, I think I learned from the best in terms of a savvy politician. He was fabulous at it. His chief of staff was fabulous at it as well. And I had the pleasure of learning from them. But what that gave to me was a year after I got the job with Shelley, he helped me get a job at the Anti-Defamation League right around the time the Crown Heights riots were breaking out. And Abe Foxman at the time told me from there to go to Crown Heights, sit with those with the bias mediators, with the police bias unit, with the crisis managers from both the Jewish and the Black communities and from all over, and just listen, take notes, and report back to him and to the agency, and don't say anything. I was a young kid. My job, I was sitting with fabulous crisis managers, and all I can do is listen and learn, and I couldn't say anything. And I had nothing to say back then. Didn't know much. And then
just take notes. Just take notes and don't get beat up.
Exactly. And that's what I did. And then shortly after that, I got a job working for Carl McCall, who was the first African-American elected statewide to New York. He was first appointed to fill a vacant seat of Ned Reagan. And then we got him through 2 terms, 2 elected terms. And that was a fabulous experience because I learned really from Carl everything about politics, really how to sit, listen, how to be identified as one thing while you're something else. He was a fiscal conservative, but he came off as a as a Harlem leader who just who echoed what they want, what people wanted to hear there, while he administered policy at the controls of the way he felt fiscal responsibility needed to be done. But at the same time, he was a guy, he taught me, very simple things. He sat in a room drinking Pinot Grigio while everyone was drinking hard liquor. That way he could listen to what they had to say. They're all getting drunk and he just keeps his cool and composure and just shakes his head. Yes, looks like he's participating, but he's doing all the listening, absorbing, and coming off looking like the hero while everyone else is just spilling their secrets. And these are things I learned from. So I had this fabulous experience working for him. I helped New York State invest for the first time in State of Israel bonds back in 1998. They never did it before because anyone knows about State of Israel bonds. Sometimes people feel that they're charity bonds and they're not easily, you can't cash them in that easily. And the New York State legislature passed a rule allowing for these to be bought. And since then, we bought $85 million at the time. Since then, New York State has invested a lot more. But what that afforded us was in 1998, a trip to Israel for the 50th Jubilee. We got a diplomatic flight. We sat with the prime minister. We were escorted back and forth to the prime minister's parties and events. And it was, I was still a kid back then. And it was fabulous and fascinating for him to be sitting among these leaders, these world leaders, because of the office that I was working in. And then I got a job a few years later working for Rubenstein on public relations. And I was assigned the Foreign Ministry of Israel. I was assigned non-for-profits. I was assigned some big clients that I'm not going to mention. And I learned from Howard Rubenstein, who was the very, very, I think he was the scion of public relations in crisis. And he could sit there and listen, shake his head. And just by listening to him, you felt comfortable, you felt good, you felt validated. And my career just exploded from there. I just went on to more, and I started getting more clients like that. And finally, in 2016, I decided I can do it on my own rather than work for another firm. And I did it on my own, and I found that I'm enjoying it. And the clients that come my way, I get the lawyers refer me very often, both in the civil and the criminal cases, to their difficult clients because I've had a relationship with them over the years. I've established it, and I have a sensitivity for it, so I could listen, and I don't get my politics involved. There are so many people. You hear Harvey Weinstein's name, I won't touch him because he's this, he's that, and it represents everything that's wrong with America. Listen, how I vote and how I think is not the way sometimes I do my work. I believe that, like I said, people are allowed or deserve representation, and if I feel I can do it, I want to, and I have. And there are a lot of people who won't take those cases.
Where will you draw the line? Where will you say I'm not taking this?
So I'm not going to mention the name, but there was a person that came to me, a lawyer that came to me for somebody, and they were involved. It was dealt with child pornography and underage underage, I guess, inappropriateness. And I didn't feel comfortable with it, and I didn't feel that I got a good enough answer for it, and I felt that I couldn't believe the story myself. That's one of the areas I drew the line. Okay. And I have to hear it myself. I have to hear from the attorney, and I speak to the lawyers. And Ben Brofman's one of my friends, and Ben Brofman feeds me clients. Arthur Idala is one of my clients. I mean, he's a client on occasion, a friend of mine, and I ask him, and probably I say, "What do you think? Do you believe it?" And if they give me the wink and nod that they're just doing because they're a lawyer and it's representing, it's not something that I want to take on either, because I have to. If I'm going to help somebody, I have to believe that I'm helping somebody who deserves the help. You mentioned, and I know that's a judgment call too. I'm passing judgment in so many ways that other people are passing too. Right. And there's no way around, no easy way around it.
From the business point of view, though, is that good for business though? It's like, hey, well, it's a monthly retainer, so we're going to need a lot more months. I can't fix it in 1 month or 2 months. I might need you to stick around for a long time. What's the business model on a lot of these?
So the truth is, the business model is straightforward public relations and branding, which you do a monthly retainer for. Crisis communications is never designed to last a lifetime. You fix the crisis and you move on, and you jump from one client. With Harvey, it's been for a long time because it's been going on for a long and many different facets to it. But with other clients, they once their issue is solved, you either get into a routine, straightforward branding and promotion, or you move on. And so it's not. But business model is ebbs and flows and peaks and valleys.
So is your main job like running Herald PR? So my guess is it's mostly benign, non-controversial clients that they're just doing their regular PR.
Sometimes too benign. Sometimes too benign for media to want to even hear.
Oh, really? Like you're just bored. It's like, I can't get coverage for this. I get that. There's a lot of companies that they're a great company, right? Or they're a great individual, but the story's not as exciting.
Right.
There's a big difference between what is a great story versus what's great in reality. And sometimes those don't match up.
And you have to be able to understand that as well and convey it to a client, because clients can't just hear yes all the time. Yeah, we can do it. It's great. Every time a client tells a story, I could clap my hands saying that's the best thing I ever heard. I tell clients, I go, that's great for you. And to you, that's the most important thing in the world. And I understand that. But the minute I present this to USA Today, New York Times, Daily News, or Inc. magazine, or advertiser, or Ad Age, whatever, they might not see it that way. And I give them a thousand reasons why their story is not so unique, and why and then we try to figure out a way of creating the uniqueness out of it, pulling out the kernels, pulling out the gems within their stories, and tell those little parts about it. And that's what they tend to look to us for as well, is to help them take what they think. Some people, they're in their own echo chamber. They see their own world and they don't see beyond it. And my job is to help them see beyond it. And my job and my staff is to help them see beyond it. And then once we do that, we take those kernels and promote those to the media. And then we have a modicum of success. We're not getting all the profiles and the features that the client wants on the issues they want necessarily all the time. But we do get those every once in a while. But for the most part, we get the clients consistent media in the way we think we can get it for them. And as long as their name comes up on searches and they see it and they can read it and hang it up and put it into a frame, put it up on their wall.
Right, exactly. That's the win.
Exactly.
Do you take a certain approach to how you market yourself and your agency's capabilities, depending on these types of clients, right? Because some of them are these big names, right? And then some of them are the everyday companies and individuals that are looking more for your traditional PR services. How do you market to these different clients? I know you said you've got relationships with lawyers like Bronfman, for example, right? But when you go on your website, when you go to what you're putting out there, your social media, what are you focusing on for who you're actively trying to bring into the fold?
So it's a good question, and thank you for asking, because the difficulty we have with that is, since I've taken on some of these clients with that have their difficult backgrounds, if you put other clients on your website, names of who you represent and what you do, it's open for people on the internet to go around searching for those clients, and then go start emailing and campaigning against those clients to get you fired from the account. Because if he represents this guy, how does he represent you? And I don't want to do business with you if you're doing business with a guy who does business with so and so.
Yeah, so it's just endless relationships, like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? You get into that mix and you're in trouble.
Exactly. So the way mostly my business has been built on name recognition and personal relationships. I've established, since I've been in, outside of politics since the year 2000. I've been in public relations, and I've met hundreds, if not thousands, of people who I maintain relations with. I send them New Year's greetings all the time. See them socially for drinks or for dinners or at other events, or if a birthday comes up, you send them a note, and you'll be surprised how over time you get phone calls from people saying, "Hey, I thought about you, and you're the guy who I think could probably represent this situation, this company, this issue." And it's been built on name recognition of myself, and my team is building a name recognition for themselves as well. But how do you differentiate yourself? I say that I have a good relationship with media. I know the media very well. They like me, and they respect. I don't know if they like me. They respect me. And as a result, I can talk to them, and I can get them on the phone, and I can convince them of the issue that we need to convince them of, or to run a piece or that. And in our game, I tell my staff this all the time: you're going to fail 88% of the time, and you got to be happy with that. If the 12% you do well, you're going to do really well, and then you'll fail the rest of the time. But you have to be able to hold your head up high and keep on going and keep on doing that. And I tell clients that I tell clients that I'm going to work for you every single day, but you're going to see the results only a few times a month. You're not going to see that every day. There's no way it's ever going to happen. I don't care how good you are. I don't care if you're Howard Rubenstein himself. You're not getting the story every day unless you're a salacious client and you're in the news for the wrong reasons every day. Then they write about you all the time.
Then you get a negative story every day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What can other agencies learn from your willingness to represent this so-called, don't touch list of personalities?
You know what? It's courage. It's having the courage to do it, and also the fortitude to withstand the criticism for it, and just say that I'm going to rise above it. I'm not going to become one of the many. I'm going to become one of the few. And that's what sets me apart. If you want to be an agency that sets yourself apart, do that as well. Don't let your politics and your idealism and your personal values cloud you from the opportunities out there, because I'm not patting myself on the back, because some people disagree with me. It's noble to help the underdog. It's noble to help people who no one else wants to represent. And I'm talking about the ones who I feel comfortable with. I'm not talking about the ones I don't. And like I said, sometimes it can seem hypocritical because I'm judging other people by saying no to them. But the ones that are really hard hit, the ones that have been canceled, the ones that have been destroyed for reasons that I believe have been bad reasons, I think it's a noble thing to help them out. And you know what? I've gotten a good reputation for that, and I get clients who know me because of that, and it helps.
Do you think other publicists should be more open to working with, let's say, controversial, I'll just use that word, controversial figures, or does it take a certain personality to represent them? Like, do you think anyone can do it if they're a good PR professional, or is it a certain personality type? And like, what is that personality type if it has to be that narrowly defined?
So I don't believe anybody can do, and I think the type of personality you have to have is one who's you have to be a little gentler, a little more mild. You have to be able to really listen. You have to be able to absorb criticism and not take it personally. You have to be able to take a lot of hits and still get up in the morning. And you have to also be able to listen. The ability to really do well for any client is to remove yourself from the situation, remove your own zeal, remove the client zeal from it, and see how the world puts it, and really put yourself in someone else's shoes. And if you can do that, then you're the right person for the job. Because if you can get beyond your own thoughts and your own ideas and see how possibly another person could be thinking about it, whether it's a pain point or a pleasure point, whether someone likes you or doesn't like it. If you can do that and guide your client in the direction, in the other direction, and tell them this is how someone else sees it, this is what we have to fix, or this is what we have to work on, I think you're doing well. But a lot of people in our field base their client base and their own their own I guess methods on their own policies, on their own ideals, on their own politics, their own views, and they can't see beyond it. And I think that's the wrong approach to have. But I think that not everyone can do it. Not everyone can. And I got to tell you, there are days when I don't want to get up. I don't want to get up, leave the house. Some days I just don't want to deal with it, because sometimes it can be cumbersome.
When you read something in the news, what is grabbing your attention in terms of the stakeholders? Who is this helping? Is this a believable story? What are the elements that you're looking for in a story that this is true versus this is a PR placement? Someone is pushing an agenda.
I would read 5, 6, 7 different stories about it. I would watch, a few different broadcasts on it: CNN, Fox, Newsmax, MSNBC, just so I can see, and I'll compare all the kernels of truth I hear, all the kernels of similarity, and the points that all come together, and then I'll hear how each one puts it, and then you could figure out the political play from the facts involved. I tell everybody, I tell any client, I tell anyone that thinks that they know politics, anything that you read, anytime, if you pick up the New York Times, pick up the Wall Street Journal, pick up I guess the Hill or whatever, or the Nation, whatever side whatever you want to read, read other stories on the same topic from competing or non-ideological similar points of view, and then gather for yourself what you see to be the factual points that everyone mentions, and then out of that distill the truth for yourself. It's listen, I think, you and I have been this for a long time, and you've been involved in on the news side of it. And you also know this, it's not just what you want to report. You also have a network behind you in some cases that wants certain messages out there. I tell people, I joke when I used to watch Fox News all the time, and people say you're just conservative. I go, no, those are just the lies I want to hear. If I want to hear the lies on the other side, I'll watch CNN. I I I admit that they're making it up too, but at least it sounds better to me.
If you go to the different sites, right? You go to foxnews.com or msnbc.com, you get a very different perspective.
You get a very different perspective.
Journal or New York Times, you read those print publications, very different, or the Post, very different perspectives on the world.
And I think you have to. And if you want to be educated properly, you have to read, several of those on the same topic, and not just one source. And then you can figure out what the story is for yourself and be reasonable.
We mentioned just a little bit earlier, when you see what's going on with Twitter right now, because it's all of this right now. Hey, what was free speech? What was news? What was real? What was being censored? What was being shadow banned? At the same time, Elon himself doesn't have PR professionals. We always hear that's right. He fired all the communications people. Right. He doesn't have PR. What is your take on everything Elon, Twitter, and what's been happening there this year?
Well, I find, first of all, I don't know what Elon Musk's business plan is going to be going forward. But I can't fathom why he would have wanted to buy Twitter for $44 billion only to bust it up and destroy it. That I don't understand. I can't figure out what his method, other than maybe he wants to run for president, but he can't because he's South African. I don't know what he wants to do with his life, but I don't see Twitter. I don't see his purchase of Twitter as being something that's going to be financially feasible if he keeps on doing what he's doing. But what you have seen is a really disturbing trend in the news lately and in politics of big tech, certain political factions steering the news in one direction and trying to cause the public to only see one side.
You've been on a few tangents here. We started with the whole work of your celebrity crisis communications. So I want to end on that. Excuse me. What are some of the myths about these celebrities that you'd like to dispel to the people?
Okay, well, listen, Anna Delvey is a wonderful person. I think she's sweet. I think she's smart. I think she's actually brilliant in her own way, and she can I believe she can contribute a lot to society. She can really help. She's not just going to get herself rich, but she will help other people. Learn how to defeat fraud, learn how to, be more charitable. She's a sweet person and a kind person. So there's nothing really to dispel with her. She committed her crime and she paid for it, and she should have a right, I believe, to rebuild her life. Simple, we can get into a deeper discussion as to how that happens and where that happens, but I'm not going to get into that right now.
What's your advice for people who think they want to work in something like this? I'm sure there's people that look at you, they're younger, think, oh, that's so cool. You're talking to celebrities. I want to be you. Are you encouraging them, or are you saying run as far away as possible?
It really depends who the person is, Eric.
If there's someone you love and like, then what do you tell them?
I would say find something else, because it's a thankless job. You're not getting pat on the back by most people. You're not getting rewarded. You're not getting promoted in the media yourself. You're behind the scenes. You're getting attacked. You're getting attacked by the public for positions that they think you're taking for a client, and your client very often doesn't have a lot of nice things to say to you either, because things aren't going their way all the time, and the people they lash out are the ones closest to them. So it's thankless.
But you make some money along the way. I guess that's the only thing, right?
I got to tell you, I have had tremendous opportunities through my life. I was in Haiti with a client the day Aristide was overthrown. We met with Guy Philippe, the rebel leader. That's something that it's scary at one time, scary to talk about, but it was fascinating on the other hand. Liberia, when Charles Taylor stepped down with a client that was negotiating with him to step down. Fascinating times, the great experiences but I wouldn't be there if I wasn't in the job that I chose. I've been at some pivotal points in life in our world history that I found to be fascinating. I worked with Christian churches and the gospel of prosperity down south. God wants me to have a G7, and my pew needs to, the pews need to give it to me 10% with tithing. And you get to see how the other half lives. You get to see how, and I don't mean the rich versus the poor. You get to see how other, how many New York Jewish guys sit down south with a bunch of Christian evangelicals. I'm not talking about today, now that it's more accepted, but back in the early 2000s when it was it's just a different world down there. And you're sitting there just, it's an important issue being discussed in the country, and I'm sitting here as part of it. I think it's exciting, but I'll tell them you have to have the fortitude for it. You have to really want to do it, because it's hard, it's challenging. You're not always going to win. In fact, you're going to lose a lot. And you have to stay on social media a lot. I used to always comment on Facebook to all my friends, whatever they wrote about, whatever policies. Since I worked for Harvey, I don't talk about it. I like pictures my children send. That's about it. I don't discuss things because
keep a very low profile on social media. We could have done a whole other episode just about social media and its impact. We touched on it a little bit, but now you see Seattle is suing the big tech companies for their influence on kids. We could spend a lot of time on there, but this has been amazing. Judah, thank you so much. I know we could go all day, but I know you have work to do. You've got calls to get back to and all that. So I am really grateful for the time. Thanks for really getting into this with me today.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Eric. Have a great day.
Yep. Thank you to my guest, and thanks for listening. Subscribe to get the latest episodes each week, and we'll see you next time.